All right, guys, welcome back. This is Jack, and welcome to our first live discussion. And tonight or this morning, depending on where you are in the world, we are going to have four main topics that we're going to be getting into. And the first one is going to be XDefiant. The second one is going to be about the Xbox Showcase. The third one is going to be about Starfield. And the fourth one is going to be about the Mortal Kombat 1 gameplay as well as story possibilities because there were a few tidbits here and there. So let's get right into it without further ado because there's a lot to discuss and each section is going to take a decent amount of time. So I hope you enjoy the Halo Infinite gameplay in the background for feasting your eyes, but for those of you guys that just prefer to listen or enjoy both, here we go. So first, I want to talk about XDefiant because some really great news within the last 24 hours has finally been revealed. And first of all, the game itself is actually going to be releasing sometime later this summer, which is great. And when I got on Twitter, just randomly, because sometimes I do that, right? I don't always just get on Twitter to, to browse endlessly, right? Sometimes I just do it randomly, or if I've got nothing else going on for a specific part of the day, it's like, yeah, let's get on Twitter. Why not? And lo and behold, I actually see Mark Rubin's tweet in my timeline at the right perfect timing, and it basically states that the game is going to be coming out during the summer. There is going to be an open beta. It's a shorter one, but it's basically to stress test the servers and get more people playing, etc., and also to get additional feedback before release. And that the game itself is actually going to release later this summer, and that we're also going to be getting 120 hertz on launch. Now, the question is, are we going to be getting 120 hertz at the beta? I'm not entirely sure, but ultimately, who cares, right? We're going to get updated servers. We're going to get, much better gameplay. We're going to get more time with the game. It's going to be open. Oh, and by the way, if you've already played the beta previously, the closed beta, you can actually have access to this beta one day early. So you can actually play on June the 20th, and then 24 hours later, the beta will go live for everybody else, right? So consider it kind of a warm-up, so to speak, right? Plus, it's a nice way to appreciate the people that have actually played your closed beta, and it is a really exciting time. I didn't actually even think about the Ubisoft Forward press conference or whatnot, but Mark Rubin got on stage, and he was on there for like 3 minutes, and it was short, and it was very sweet. They also detailed a very interesting roadmap, a roadmap that actually describes how Call of Duty's roadmaps used to be back during its heyday, right? So, and the fact that we're getting something like this and something so transparent from a much smaller team, what's up, Laura? From a much smaller team as well, is something that's very very interesting because as the Call of Duty community, or the community that just loves arcade first-person shooters, basically is getting the kind of transparency that we've been longing for a long time, and the kind of support from the devs and from love and passion. And I'm finally glad that we get to this point. And there's actually going to be a 6-week roadmap, like a preseason, like a 6-week preseason before the first season originally officially launches. And then there's obviously going to be more maps. There's going to be more weapons. There's going to be more maps, more weapons, more factions. And I believe that Mark Rubin himself also said that it's basically going to be like one map every month, which is great. So, and obviously there's also going to be new game modes, and of course 90 tiers of battle pass for every season. So, and the thing is, for me, I keep thinking to myself, in terms of everything that was just mentioned here, whether you want to talk about the battle pass or whether you want to talk about the maps and all that kind of stuff, for me, if the game is going to be quality, which I believe it is, and from what we've seen so far, it is, especially with this open beta coming up and with the updated servers, with the hit detection. And they also said they fixed aim assist. There was also a different interview with Patrick Price, who's a former Call of Duty Pro player who now is developing this game. They said that they fixed the aim assist as well as some other things that the community was basically stating. And if that wasn't enough, there's one more thing, which also makes me very excited. And that is the fact that people that have last gen consoles that have not, for whatever reason, been able to upgrade, because there's varying reasons as to why people have not been able to upgrade yet. Guess what? these people are going to have their shot at XDefiant. I would probably guess maybe a month or two after launch, because they're working on it and they're going to get it released. And it's going to be sometime shortly after the launch on the current gen consoles, which is the PS5, the PC, and of course, the Xbox Series X and S. So, now, just an FYI for anybody that might be curious that's listening to this, I have an Xbox Series X and I also have a PC. And I may go back and forth and just see how it feels on both sides and play on both. But ultimately, this information is extremely exciting, and I'm very glad that the last gen console players are also being put into this, because the game itself it's not the most technologically demanding game or whatnot, but it's good that the last gen console players get to experience a silky 60 frames per second game with, graphics that are not the most demanding, because we know that the past gen consoles of the Xbox One and the PS5 the PS4, for instance, are definitely capable of handling a game like this and running it. Even though their limit is 60 frames per second, I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Obviously 120 frames is better, but you guys get my point here. Call of Duty became the king of first person shooters for a long time at some point, because of the whole 60 frames per second. Now, I know that was years ago and such, but still to this day, having a silky 60 frames per second is passable. Right. So I'm really glad that the last gen consoles are getting the kind of treatment that they deserve, and they get a shot to play this along with us, which is great. So I'm looking forward to launch. I hope it's sooner rather than later. My expectations for XDefiant is as follows. If this last and final beta that's going to be open reveals from a data perspective and feedback as well to the devs from us, if it reveals that everything is looking good and they have the minimal amount to do between now and launch, or between the 20th when the beta is going to come out and then the launch, if everything is smooth and looking good, and if all the stuff they have to work on is on a minimal basis, then guess what? I think the game is going to release sooner. Why delay it even more? There's kind of no sense to it, right? Especially since the final date, since the date hasn't been finalized, at least to my knowledge, right? Because I think they're kind of leaving it wide open. Maybe they don't even know, or maybe they do have a date, but they just haven't announced it yet. But it's going to be sometime later this summer. But for me personally, in terms of common sense, I think they're doing it because they don't have a final date, and they're just saying at the end of summer, or later on this summer, is because of the fact that they want to see what the feedback and what the data is going to be like. And if it says that they still have a lot more to work on, then they'll have a release window after that. And if it seems like everything is good and there's a minimal amount to work on, they're going to release sooner. From a selfish standpoint, yes, I want them to release sooner. But ultimately, I want the game to obviously be functional at launch. I want the servers to be stress tested properly, so that way people can get on and play and not have to worry about the issues with that. And obviously, we want the game to be as bug-free as possible. And we want the game to be running as smoothly as possible for every single person who experiences the game, because ultimately that's all we want at this point, right? So we know we're going to get a great game. We know we're going to get the transparency and the support. We know that the developers are actually listening to the feedback that we give them, as well as anything else that we may give them in terms of creativity and stuff like that. These guys are listening. Mark Rubin is listening. He genuinely cares. And it's great that the arcade first-person shooter community is finally going to get a game that they've been longing for, as well as the kind of support from the devs and the transparency from the devs that we've been longing for a long time, especially if you're within the Call of Duty community. I really don't think I need to say more about that. So in terms of XDefiant, good times lie ahead. It's going to be a very exciting time in terms of getting all the players on this open beta. I, for one, have been very much looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the servers, these updated servers, along with the hit detection and in terms of how the lag is and all that kind of stuff. I really want to see how this plays more than anything. That's one of the things that I've been most curious about, especially with the controller input lag, because for those of you guys that don't know, even though I play on the Xbox Series X, I use a Brook super converter that allows me to play on the PS5 with the PS5 controller. And why am I playing on the PS5 controller? And it's simply because of the fact that the sticks, for me personally, just allow me to aim so much better with the PS5 sticks than compared to an Xbox One or an Xbox Series X controller. For a first-person shooter, so that's why I use that, and that's what I use when you see Halo here. When you see this gameplay here, it's what I use for, again, first-person shooters. PlayStation controller, in my opinion, for me personally, just for me, because of the sticks, is much better. But overall, it's a great controller. Even the Xbox One controller is great and all, but again, I miss that 360 controller, man. But it is what it is. But in terms of XDefiant, that is what I wanted to talk about, and that is very exciting news. I'm really excited for Mark Rubin and his team to finally get this baby released, because it's been a long road in order to get to where we are now. And with all the kind of bad news that we've been getting in terms of Activision kind of just getting rid of some of these modders or whatnot, and everything like that, it's literally a breath of fresh air that we're going to get a game like this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it fully plays on launch, when the entire population of the community basically just floods this game completely, and just how much fun it's going to be to play. I very much am looking forward to it. I want to know down in the comment section what you guys are looking forward to the most in the game. Are you looking forward to kind of reliving the older days of the arcade first-person shooter era, back when COD was in its heyday, before it became what it is today? What are you most excited about when it comes to this game? I want to know down in the comment section. Please let me know your thoughts. And that concludes the first topic of today's discussion. Now, I'm going to switch things around a little bit, and I'm going to make the second topic today straight about Mortal Kombat 1. So the second main topic today that we're going to talk about is Mortal Kombat 1. Now, recently, obviously Ed Boon's been doing interviews and stuff like that with some content creators as well, not just people with IGN and GameSpot and all that kind of stuff, but with content creators as well. And whenever I go to play pool, or whenever I have some time to myself to look stuff up on YouTube or whatever it is, or to read up on stuff, guess what I do? I listen to these interviews and watch them or whatnot, right? If I'm playing pool, I'm obviously just listening. And obviously I've seen the gameplay trailer. First of all, let's just confirm the big elephant in the room, right? It looks absolutely terrific. And one of the things that Ed Boon said was that this time around they had to upgrade engines, right? So they were at Unreal 3 in Mortal Kombat 11, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And right now they upgraded to, I don't know, whether it was Unreal 4 or Unreal 5, I don't know. But they've upgraded engines, which obviously takes a lot of time. And then there's a lot of things that developers have to learn and all that kind of stuff. I don't know too much of the tech that goes into that, but ultimately it's an endeavor. But the game is going to be overall better for it. And what we've also learned is through the trailer, the gameplay trailer itself, we've also learned a few tidbits about the story that actually confirm the things that I've speculated, some of the things I've speculated in video form, and other things I've actually speculated in non-video form, just kind of thinking about the subject. And let's talk about that real quick. The first thing is that Scorpion and Sub-Zero are brothers. In this timeline, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are officially brothers, and it's really great to see the relationship like this in this form, because they were in the original story, they were enemies for years and all that kind of stuff, and through deception of Quan Chi and everything that he did, right? So, and then they kind of became acquaintances, and then after that they kind of called it a truce, and it's like that's the direction they were heading, right? It was always better to see Scorpion and Sub-Zero working together as opposed to being against each other, right? We've had both. So now it's like, okay, let's make them siblings. So it's really interesting to see that. And I believe Sub-Zero is actually the older of the two, and Scorpion is younger, if I'm not mistaken. They might be twins. I don't know. They sure as hell looked a lot alike when you looked at the original trailer at the reveal. Their body types looked alike. But I think Scorpion is slightly taller than Sub-Zero, unless I got my angles wrong. But there's one more interesting thing that I speculated, and that is that two things, actually. Number one, Melina seems to be not the queen necessarily, but the princess of Edenia. I mean, we don't know if Sindel exists in this timeline yet. She probably does, but we'll see. But she's like either the queen or the princess of Edenia, and Kitana is not. So the roles are reversed. However, there's one more little tidbit that is very important that I speculated, and that is that Melina's teeth is not because she's Tarkatan, or it doesn't seem that she was created by Shang Tsung in this timeline in the way they're telling this story. No, it's more of a fact that it's actually a disease. She has a disease. And it seems like Kitana actually cares about her. She's like, hey, I only want what's best for you. And then Melina basically says, or do you secretly covet my throne? So that basically said it all. So, and then another thing which is great, we're actually getting a Raiden storyline. We're gonna know about Raiden and his about how he came to be. He obviously has his powers of lightning and thunder, but the question is he gonna be a god this time around, or is this, or is he actually going to be a god and this is the way he gets there, or is he not going to be a god and he just happens to be another one of those Mortal Kombat fighters that just has his powers, and you kind of get to see where he gets them from or how he uses them and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he becomes a god, you just never know, or he becomes something else, you just never know. But ultimately, there was one little tidbit from the gameplay trailer that was really cool, and that is that he said that he was training, I believe, with Kenshi, and he says, you lack experience, and then Raiden responds with, what I lack in experience I make up for with heart. So we're going to get to know Raiden in a way that we've never known him before, which for me personally is a really big highlight and a really big deal, because Raiden is actually one of my favorite Mortal Kombat characters of all time. And now that we get very much in depth about the character in terms of how he develops from being who he is currently into what he ends up becoming, which again has yet to be seen, is going to be very interesting. And next up, here's something very interesting as well, especially if you're a 90s fan like myself. So Ed Boon and crew have been trying to get Jean-Claude Van Damme on the game for years, and they gotten really close, like 4 or 5 times, and now they finally got him. So Johnny Cage is going to have a Jean-Claude Van Damme skin, but it doesn't stop there. Jean-Claude Van Damme himself is actually going to be doing the voice of Johnny Cage as well. So we're going to get like a full-on Johnny Cage skin of a full-on Jean-Claude Van Damme skin of Johnny Cage, and along with the voice acting as well. So that is going to be cool. And there's also one more that Ed Boon is obviously not ready to announce yet, but Ed Boon hinted that there's one more character like that. But the question is, who is it going to be? Which actor is it going to be? We just never know. I don't know, but it's exciting nonetheless. And of course, let's talk about the gameplay. There's a lot of Mortal Kombat 11 DNA in this game, but at the same time, there's even more things that are new. Obviously, the cameo characters, which, by the way, Ed Boon did reveal that the cameo characters themselves are actually not going to be, how do I put this? The cameo characters themselves are actually not going to be story related. They're going to have nothing to do with the story itself. The cameo characters that are not a part of the main roster, that don't have anything to do with the story, are just there for gameplay that will enhance everything. So a lot of fans were kind of complaining about Mortal Kombat 11 being slow, like really slow. Well, not really slow, but slower in comparison and more limited. And Ed Boon even said this, and I'm paraphrasing, that they're basically lifting restrictions, right? They're basically lifting restrictions on the gameplay limitations from the last game. And they're kind of using the cameo characters in order to do that. Like you're going to see cameo fatalities. Like it's going to be your main character and then your cameo character doing a fatality, doing these fatal blows and x-rays and stuff. I mean, I think it seems like fatal blows are back. And then obviously with the moves, it's going to be very easily accessible. You just with the touch of a button. I believe it's one of the shoulder buttons, the left shoulder button or the right shoulder button, that you can come in and you can obviously press anything on the D-pad along with that to specifically assign an attack for that character to do. And there's plenty of them, it seems. And they've also done a little bit of a throwback to where the cameo characters, they've got like their original costumes from the original Mortal Kombat timeline, which is pretty damn cool, especially if you're one of the fans like me that grew up during that time and you look at Kano's costume, you're like, holy shit. Or when you look at Sonya's costume, it's like, oh my gosh, this is their Mortal Kombat 1 look and costume. But they made them relevant in this game in that form via a way of cameo, which is interesting. So I honestly think that, and there's also a couple of cameo characters that are actually going to be both roster and both cameo. So I think it's going to be to like the most popular ones, the ones that constantly get requested, and the ones that Mortal Kombat can't do without, like for instance your Scorpions and Sub-Zeros. So I believe it's already been revealed that Ed Boon basically said like Sub-Zero, you can have your regular Sub-Zero like from the main roster, and then he can also be a cameo character, and they can both look very different. And I think that's cool. So you can actually have 2 Sub-Zeros and 2 Scorpions, and you can have a Scorpion and a Sub-Zero, yada yada yada. So that makes it for a very interesting combination. And at the same time, if you are a person that prefers that and only sticks to a couple of characters because you just love those characters regardless of how they play, or because you stick to those characters because of how they play, you can do that. And they've basically made it to where there's no alternate versions of characters anymore in terms of like alternate styles that you choose from. Like everything that you're going to be able to do with the characters is going to be front and center, and it's going to be like right there. So when you look at it from a cameo fighter standpoint, as well as the fact that there's no alternates anymore, yeah, restrictions are definitely getting lifted, and I think there's different ways also that they've sped up the game in terms of they're very kind of combo related, and how you maybe dash in and out and how you use that. So they're basically, it's going to be basically, like I said, like kind of like I predicted, like that middle ground between Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat X, but at the same time, it's kind of up to the player in terms of what the player is capable of doing. And the fact that they've lifted those restrictions is something that a lot of players that I've seen, according to a couple of content creators that I've seen, they're really very much into that. Like they're legitimately into that, and they're very excited about it, and they actually want to play more so that way they can discover more. I mean, one of my favorite content creators, Maximilian Dude, basically said that himself. Like he wants to play more, and he's also a former competitive fighting game player. Okay, so he's one of the guys that actually knows what the hell he's doing. It's not just because of his content creation status, but this guy actually competed against the best of the best, because he was like a top 1% level player when it comes to fighting games, and many fighting games at that. So this guy knows his shit. So when you get people like that, as well as other members of that specific community, saying that they want to play the game in order to discover more, that is a good sign. Because in the previous game, some other people were like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I've got enough footage. I spent 30 minutes or an hour with the game. I've got enough footage. I get it. I totally get it. But now it's like these guys want to play more to uncover more. And when you give more options to the community, they're going to love you for it. And they're going to discover all sorts of ways to play. And I think that's another reason why they're going to have a beta. So when you have a game that's in depth to that degree, it's like you got to have a beta, because you can't have anything too freaking broken unless everything is broken, right? If everything is broken, then you're good. But at the same time, there's got to be a limit within it, especially since Mortal Kombat now is a game that also has been it's gotten to the realm of the fact that it's a competitive fighter now. It's entered into that, and it started with Mortal Kombat 9, and then obviously in Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat 11. So they've been getting a lot more technical since then. I mean, they started off basic, and they've grown into what they've grown today. So props to NetherRealm for doing that. They've managed to walk that fine line of, yes, our game is accessible, but at the same time, it's very much in depth, and they provide their own flavor to that. So props to them, because it's much more difficult to execute something like that successfully than it is to just think about it, or just to kind of think about the ideas that you can implement and stuff like that. It is very difficult for them to do that. So props to them. And one more thing I want to say before ending this specific topic about Mortal Kombat 1, there is something that I want to mention, and that is that there's something else. I think there's I highly speculate that there's going to be another game mode. Now, I don't know what that game mode's going to be. I'm personally wanting a conquest style mode, but at the same time, there's still a possibility that there may be a part of the story mode. However, despite the fact that we've been revealed a decent amount of things as of now, we're going to be getting over the next 6 to 8 weeks or so before, which will be up to a month or so before the game's release, or should I say maybe up to 2 months before the game's release. I think that within these next 2 months, we're going to be given a good amount of information in terms of what exactly is going to be in the game. And quite frankly, they got no choice but to tell us anyway, because it's a selling point. Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, it is a business. It really is a business, so they need to promote their product, right? So if there's a whole other game mode that's going to be like immersive, or if they've done something with the story that they haven't announced yet or whatnot, that's going to be even more immersive and make it better than the other iterations of story mode in fighting games that we've ever seen, or more ways to unite the community in some way, shape, or form, like with every single piece of content that the game has to offer, by all means, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to announce it. I mean, they've got to. It's like, what does your game have in it? So far, what have we seen? We've seen a reveal trailer, which hints a little bit about the story, and then a short, a gameplay trailer, which again hints a little bit more about the story, and obviously tells a lot about gameplay. But at the same time, does it tell us about all the modes? No. Does it tell us about the currency system? Did it give us details about the currency system other than the fact that there is a currency system? No. Have we seen the crypt? And we know there's going to be a crypt. There's just no way. There's no way that there's not. It's a great concept. It's been a great concept. It's been in the game since Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and it's something that the fans absolutely love, and it's only been getting better with every iteration. There's just no way that there's not going to be a crypt. So with Mortal Kombat 1, I, for one, am very excited, and it feels very weird for it to be called Mortal Kombat 1. And the reason why I say this is because, well, I actually played the original Mortal Kombat 1, even though it was called Mortal Kombat. But, you know, obviously the title of 1 didn't get added to that game until MK2 came out, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to call this game Mortal Kombat 1. But for me personally, I'm also excited for it. I'm excited for the story. I'm excited for these characters. I want to see how Raiden's story progresses. I want to see what happens with Mileena and Kitana, as well as the other characters that we have yet to see. We have yet to see a bunch of other characters, and I want to know. Oh, speaking of characters, a couple more things I want to say before we close the second topic here. And number one is that I believe in some way, shape, or form. I'm still holding on to what I said in the previous video about MK1. I believe that every single character that has existed in the Mortal Kombat timeline, at least let's say optimistically, at least like 90+% of them, like the ones that are truly like, you know, that fans have cared about over all these Mortal Kombat generations that we've had and iterations of games, right? I think that they're going to make, at the very least, some will make a bigger appearance, some will make a lesser experience, but they're going to be in the game in some way, shape, or form. I truly and wholeheartedly believe that. And it's going to be very interesting in terms of how that happens and what they're doing with the story mode to, you know, bring it up another step from what we've seen in previous games. So with that being said, what are you guys excited for when it comes to Mortal Kombat 1? Is it for the character reveals, the other new modes, all the changes and yet familiar iterations? Like, what specifically are you looking forward to? Because every single time Ed Boon does a new interview about the game, especially since he has so recently, or whenever they officially decide to reveal something, whether it's in their vlog form that they've been doing, or in the form of a promotional trailer of some kind, I'm always hyped about Mortal Kombat. I'm always hyped. And the biggest reason for me to come back to the game is obviously number one, the story mode. And then of course, give me Conquest. You give me Conquest, I will literally be all over that game like white on rice. You know, right now at this stage of my life, I've been playing a lot of first person shooters, obviously, like you kind of see in the background. But back in the day, I always played Mortal Kombat, and fighting games were my bread and butter back in the day, up until, you know, a certain point. But they've never completely left me because I've always loved Mortal Kombat, especially when it comes to the story and everything else that's come with it. Anyway, that concludes the second topic of today's discussion. So I want to know down in the comment section, what do you guys think? What are you most excited for? Let me know. I want to know, and let's get on to topic number 3. So the topic number 3 for today's discussion is about the Xbox Live Showcase. And I want to say, and I feel like I always have to start a conversation like this when it comes to this topic. And that is that I want to make it perfectly clear that I am not an Xbox fanboy or a Microsoft fanboy. I'm not a PlayStation fanboy. I'm not a Nintendo fanboy. I am a gaming fanboy. I love every single iteration of consoles and everything, despite their flaws and despite all the BS. I want all forms of gaming to succeed because I've been gaming for 31 years of my 38 years of existence, in 3 months to be 39. And gaming has played a really big part of my life. It played a really big part of my childhood. It's done a lot of great things for me, which again will be another discussion to be had. But ultimately, I want every single developer, every single studio, every single genre, every single platform to succeed in their vision, right? Because when we all succeed, we actually all win, right? We all have a good time, we all win, and around we go. Now, with all that being said, with the Xbox Showcase, right? You have a lot of Xbox purists, right? The ultimate Xbox fanboys and purists that are praising the show, and rightfully so, because it was overall better than what PlayStation had presented, because PlayStation presented pretty much like 90%, give or take, right? Was like just CG trailers of the games, right? With, you know, minimal gameplay, you know, if you don't count Spider-Man especially, right? So there was a couple of other games that had gameplay, but for the most part, it was like 90% CG and stuff like that. And anyway, so a lot of Xbox fanboys are just praising this as being like the best showcase they've ever done or whatnot. I respectfully disagree. However, with that being said, it was better than Sony's, but at the same time, in my eyes, that's not saying much. Now, again, that's just a matter of opinion because, again, there are players out there and people out there that are open to literally playing anything, even if it's something completely new. So if something didn't appeal to me, maybe that's why it didn't hit as hard. But the thing is, like when I looked at the Hellblade Saga presentation, that part of the presentation, when they showed in-game footage, well, the in-game footage was just, the character walking from one point to the next, but there wasn't really anything gameplay or combat revealed or anything like that. I personally don't consider that gameplay. Sure, it's in-game engine, but it's like I don't consider that gameplay. That is not gameplay to me. Gameplay is when you see like the interactions and the combat and everything like that. Even if it was God of War, even if it was Mario or whatever it was, and they just showed Mario walking around, or if they showed Kratos walking around and really not doing anything and just kind of walking from point A to point B, I really don't count that as gameplay. I don't count that as anything at all. I mean, it's not really showing us anything. It's like, okay, your character can move around. That's fine, whatever. But that's just kind of like one example. There's obviously what's really cool is that that Sega's relationship with Microsoft is strengthening, as well as Capcom's relationship. So there are a couple of heartbreakers though, for me personally. Killer Instinct was not at the showcase. Yeah, that was kind of a heartbreak, and neither was Gears of War. We know that Microsoft actually cares about Gears of War, but the thing is, it's probably the developers probably didn't have anything to show, and they probably didn't want to show anything until they're fully ready. And I think what they want to do is ultimately just completely wow the crowd. Like they want to have like the trailer, and then they want to get into gameplay, and then they want to have a discussion about the game, to like a large extent. I don't think the coalition would want anything less for their baby. And Gears of War is a franchise that's very respected. The Xbox heads, the guys that are pretty much running the show, the bosses and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure that they want the community to like what they see as well. So it seems like they're giving the coalition all the time they need in order to get to a point to where they're ready to show it. But for me personally, it sucks that it wasn't there, but it is what it is. A lot of people are like, well, they don't care about Halo because Halo didn't show up. It's like, well, they don't have anything to show either. I guess Project Tatanka is still a ways away. And on top of that, you just have a season 4. And the thing is with Halo, if you really want to wow fans with Halo, and if you really want fans to love Halo again, it's like when you make a presentation on the big stage, it's got to be big. Like if you're going to be on the big stage, the presentation itself needs to be big, because Halo is slowly but surely crawling back into where it needs to be. But at the same time, it's not where it needs to be just yet. It's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be and where it belongs, and at the quality and all that other kind of stuff. So putting all that together, it's again, it's a matter of time. It doesn't necessarily mean that Microsoft doesn't give a damn. But at the same time, Microsoft really needs to show also a lot of new things and a lot of other things that have been talked about before. So we're going to get into that a little bit more here. And obviously they started the show off with Fable, which is great because a lot of fans obviously love Fable. It was announced first, like I think it was 3 years ago, give or take. And it was like a very brief CGI. Well, I don't even think we can even call it a CGI trailer. It was just a very brief announcement type of trailer. And now we got to see a few things. So obviously the people that make Fable are very capable of doing what they're doing, but it needs to be in tip-top shape, and it needs to be where it needs to be in order for us to learn more, and as well as the gameplay and everything like that, because Fable is held to high regard for a very good reason. And it's actually said by a lot of people that Fable 2 has yet to be surpassed. I don't know how true this is, but let's just say it is, right? Let's say it is true. And if Fable 2 has yet to be surpassed, well, I think it's time with this upcoming game, Fable 4, which I don't think we have a release date for yet, is, we can't, we gotta let the devs take their time on this one. I mean, we should do that all the time, but you guys get the point. So let's see, what other game did I actually want to talk about that was released? Obviously Fable was first, And then we've got South of Midnight, which is basically a Compulsions game, South of Midnight, which will come out on the Series X and the PC, and day one on Game Pass. And it's an American Deep South specifically, and it looks to be on the Bayou. It's certainly fantasized elements mixed with Southern setting. South of Midnight developer Compulsion Games describes the tone as macabre. Is that how you pronounce that? So very interesting, I guess, and we'll see. Now, one of the big highlights for me is a new Star Wars game. It's called Star Wars Outlaws, and obviously with the success of Jedi Fallen Order and with the success of Jedi Survivor, because despite the fact that it kind of had a rough PC port or whatnot, or just a rough port, a little bit of a rough port at start in general, you can't underestimate the fact that Jedi Survivor is a great game, and obviously it all started with Fallen Order. So of course they're gonna make more Star Wars games. Of course they are. It's people will eat that shit up. It's money, and it features a new protagonist in a world overrun by crime syndicates. And this protagonist is neither a Jedi or a Sith. She's living in the gray world of smugglers and thieves. It's developed by Massive Entertainment, and a gameplay reveal of the open world story-driven game is coming during the Ubisoft Forward event on Monday. Now, which obviously was already revealed. Now, one of the things that I kind of can't help but call bullshit on is the fact that this game is said they're promoting this as the quote unquote first open world Star Wars game. And the first thing that comes to my mind is obviously bullshit. And then the second thing is, there's a little game that came out a long time ago, I believe on the original Xbox, called KOTOR, Star Wars KOTOR, also known as Knights of the Old Republic. And obviously people call it KOTOR. So Knights of the Old Republic was so big back then that I even knew about it. And I don't even play RPGs regularly or normally. I don't. And everybody was playing KOTOR. My best friends and their best friends were putting serious amounts of time into KOTOR. And they absolutely loved it and ate it up and spent a ridiculous amount of time with it. And yeah, there's a reason why KOTOR is regarded as one of the best Star Wars games ever made, as well as one of the best RPGs ever made. There's a good reason for that. So don't promote this game as the first open world Star Wars game, because that's BS. So anyway, am I glad that it's open world? Absolutely. Having that kind of freedom in order to go wherever you want at any point in time that you want is obviously great. And the story actually takes place between episodes 5 and 6, by the way. So Luke Skywalker is around, Yoda's around, Vader's around. So when you got characters like that into your game, well, you just never know who you are going to see and when. Han Solo, Princess Leia, you name it. So you just never know. And as a kid who grew up with the original trilogy, I can appreciate that, and it gives me yet another reason to play it, because you never know who will be in that game. I remember people going apeshit when in Jedi Fallen Order when Vader appeared at the end, right? And he was like the final boss of the game. People were going apeshit. People were like literally like, just hyped over it. I still love watching the reactions to this day. But anyway, there's another game called 33 Immortals as well. Payday 3 has actually made their debut trailer. Persona 3 Reload. What else? Avowed. Now this is another big title. Obviously, a lot of people are kind of like some people are a little bit upset because it doesn't quote unquote look the way they were hoping, but at the same time, ultimately what matters more than anything is that this game plays the way it plays. So this is actually going to be kind of like a Skyrim type of alternative. So there's high expectations for this game, and it was actually announced a while ago, actually. And now that we got to see some gameplay of it is really good. And again, some people were just expecting it to look better. But ultimately, here's my opinion. And, while my opinion is just my opinion, it's not the end all be all, but here's the way I look at it. Games, for the most part today, even though there's games that some look better than others, absolutely. But games today in general just look good. Ultimately, what needs to happen is that the gameplay needs to match the looks. Obviously, some games look better than others, but, games these days look really good overall, in my humble opinion. And I know that graphics are important. They kind of always have been when it comes to gaming, but The gameplay to match the graphics, I believe, is something that needs to be intact in order for a game to succeed. Because no matter how good a game looks, if it doesn't have personality, which is its gameplay, right? Gameplay translates to personality translates to gameplay in terms of the gaming spectrum. It's just not going to last. I mean, you can have the prettiest game in the world, but if it's a walking simulator, what is fun about a walking simulator, in my opinion? Maybe there are a few people out there that enjoy walking simulators, but you guys get the point. There's, you know, uh, walking simulator. And speaking of simulators, Flight Simulator 2024 was announced, and there's going to be other stuff that you can do as well, bringing it to another level. Flight Simulator was actually surprisingly, at least to me, surprisingly, was quite popular. A lot of people seem to like it, and basically now that they're bringing it to a whole other level and giving that game some love, and as well as being on Game Pass and all that stuff, is very appealing. You know, I want people that love simulators for whatever reason they do, whether it's because they want to become a pilot, or whether it's because they just enjoy that sort of experience of, doing it virtually or whatever it is. That's great. So I want, I want them to be able to enjoy that. And especially since, like, with today's technology, everything looks so real and the environments look so real. I think that's something that we can't really ignore. And I think it's, there has to be, when it comes to the gaming world, one of the reasons why the gaming world is so popular and so successful financially is because they try to appeal to everybody. Like, they want to make it to where, there's going to be something for everybody. So next up, we've got Sea of Thieves, The Legend of Monkey Island. So if you're all about Monkey Island, that's going to be imported into Sea of Thieves as well. I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about that. Next up, let's see, there's the Dune expansion for the Microsoft Flight Simulator, and Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. I've already talked about that. We really didn't see too much of anything. Just it was very cinematic, and of course it looked really good, and it could have been running in game, but at the same time, one person walking from one area to another area is just really not much of anything to praise over. But hopefully in due time, a lot of people that are fans of Hellblade are going to be able to see more. I really want them to see more. And next up, we have Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. And this one was kind of hilarious to me because it started out, where this guy just woke up on the beach, in the middle of the beach, butt ass naked. And there was a crowd all over the place. So he's like, what's going on? So, yeah. And it's coming in early 2024. And here is something very interesting from Capcom. And Capcom has been on a roll lately. They had this dry spell, right? They had this drought to where, they kind of went dry for a little while. And then, with Devil May Cry 5 and everything else that followed, they've kind of been back, and they've been on a roll, which is great. And hopefully they keep that momentum up. And this one is called Konitsugami, Path of the Goddess. It's very Japanese. It looks really great. The vibrant colors are terrific, but yet we don't know much about it. It was basically an announcement trailer. So Konitsugami Path of the Goddess is described as an epic clash between the spirit realm and mortal man, featuring traditional Japanese aesthetics from Capcom. So that by itself spells potential, because again, the developer is Capcom and it's Japanese. And the premise is actually pretty interesting too. As little as we know, it's pretty interesting. It's like, okay, it's a clash between the spirit realm and mortal man. That's interesting. So it's like, I don't know, for some reason it just reminds me of Ghost of Tsushima, just describing that alone. But I think it could be something that could really translate into gameplay very well. So we'll see what Capcom does with that. They've shown throughout time and history that Capcom, that they are very capable of creating great games, right? Great games, and kind of translate that into gameplay, right? So it's going to be very interesting. So looking forward to seeing how that develops. And then, of course, if you are a car / racing fanatic, Forza Motorsport is obviously right up your alley. And Forza Motorsport is going to be the game that is going to be, that is obviously going to look pretty in terms of graphical capability. It's going to really show off the power of the Xbox Series X, at least according to the developers themselves. And again, if you're into car racing and if you're into motorsports, it's basically PlayStation has Gran Turismo, Xbox has Forza Motorsport. And obviously these things, I've got a 1440p monitor, and if I were to play Forza Motorsport on it, I have no doubt that the cars would look really nice and shiny. And thankfully, I'm not the biggest car fanatic. I know that's very I know that a lot of guys are, most guys are, but I'm not the biggest car fanatic. I'm more of a home person as opposed to a car person. Not that I don't appreciate a nice car, or not that I don't appreciate a nice sports car, but if I were to win one of these cars, these exotic cars, right? You know what I would do? I'd be like, you know what? Let's sell it right away at auction. Let's just sell this bad boy right away, and I can just collect the cash and put it aside for savings and live life the way I want to live. And it's like, hey, good for you. Sweet, enjoy your car. I'm gonna enjoy this money. So, but that's me. But there's a lot of people out there that are not gonna do that. Like they're gonna go and they're gonna go ride around in it and shit like that, and maybe even just keep it regardless of whatever, because they're big fans of cars. So, but anyway, but yeah, Forza Motorsport. It's gonna be very interesting how this game looks, especially. Next up, we've got Overwatch 2. We have Invasion. Now, obviously, as of lately, it's been announced that the PvE mode that they were, I guess, originally developing has been scrapped for whatever reason. But they're getting a bunch of stuff like they got a new Flashpoint game mode, Hero Mastery, a co-op event, firing range, story missions, and a few more things that they haven't discussed yet. So Game Pass Ultimate subscribers can unlock the 6 newest heroes, legendary skins, and in-game cosmetics. It's all coming on August 10th. So people that are loving Overwatch and that are big fans of hero shooters or whatnot, it's going to be getting some love. I actually featured it here on the channel not too long ago. And there were a few gameplays to where it was like I went, one's a gameplay specifically when I went on a 25 gun streak and, I didn't die once. So casual gaming, in my opinion, especially in the quick play playlist, exists in that game. So the fact that a game like that is getting an expansion with more content is obviously always great. And looking forward to what else they come up with. Persona 5 Tactica is another game. Atlas also confirmed that it's working on Persona 5 spin-off game, Persona 5 Tactica, and it's scheduled for release on November 17th, taking Persona 5 into the genre more akin Fire Emblem or XCOM with turn and grid-based gameplay. Let's see what else. And it's scheduled for release on the original Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Windows. And it's probably going to come to PlayStation as well. So next is Starfield, but we're not going to talk about that because that's going to be the fourth and final main topic, and that's how we're going to finish it off. But until then, let's go on to the next game, Jusant, which is basically a climbing simulator with really cool animations and art design. It's called Don't Nod's next game will be an exploration platformer with an emphasis on all sorts of climbing. The stylish fantasy world of Jusant will debut on fall of 2023. Next up, we have Still Wakes the Deep. Basically, secret mode in Chinese Room debuted in Still Wakes the Deep with a haunting trailer that takes horror to the ocean. It's expected out in early 2024. Gee, how scary can that be? You got the ocean, and then you got horror, of course. Now we've got Dungeons of Hinterberg, and that is it's described as skateboarding on a blade, journaling, and puzzles. And it's basically announced for a 2024 release date. So I'm really pleased to see that a lot of games out there have actually taken to the Overwatch art style, as well as different art styles in games that kind of look cartoony but are not exactly cartoony, and mixing the best of both worlds. Especially when you look at games like Overwatch. I mean, I'm sorry, not Overwatch, but when you look at games like Borderlands, for instance, they've always had a unique art style. So I'm glad that there's different unique art styles coming as opposed to the regular stuff that we see in games nowadays. And next up, Cyberpunk 2077 is getting an expansion. It's called Phantom Liberty, and Keanu Reeves was there in all of his glory, talking about the game and debuting it. And of course, you can't help but love Keanu Reeves. And to top it all off, Idris Elba is going to be in the game as well, so as his own character. That's going to be interesting. And the trailer looked great, and I'm pretty sure Cyberpunk 2077 is playing a lot better now than it did on release. It really breaks my heart that the game was released in the state that it was, but hopefully it got better now, and hopefully whoever is playing it is still into it. But at the same time, a lot of players just never really got back into it because, well, timing is everything, right? And there's other things that come out. So it's kind of like a woman. If you don't grab her attention, somebody else will. All right, let's get on to the next one. Oh, by the way, Phantom Liberty is scheduled to launch on September 26th on PS5, PC, Xbox Series X, for $29.99. All right, next up we got City Skylines 2. This reminded me of Sim City. You guys remember Sim City? Holy hell. This is like Sim City on a whole other level where you can literally build anything and everything. I could so see young folks. I mean, I can see this. I can see anybody doing this, but I could so see young folks that really love building shit creating some amazing stuff in this specific game. Like, look up the trailer. You will understand 100% exactly what I am talking about. You know, to even compare this to SimCity, I think it would be kind of not doing it justice. So it's a classic city builder. City Skylines is getting a sequel. City Skylines 2 is slated for release on October 24th. Now, wait a minute. October 24th or 2024? No, it's probably, yeah, no, it's October 24th. So 1 week before Halloween, guys. So that's going to be kind of interesting. I think that a lot of people are going to also are also going to be building some Halloween themed shit. But literally building your own world, and you could probably create something amazing, and you could probably, like, if you're an architect or something like that, you can actually present it to like a board meeting or something like that. Can you imagine that shit? Damn. That's exciting, actually. I wouldn't mind watching some streamers create some shit. Next up, we got Metaphor Refantanzio, which is described as a creative talent behind Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5 are working on a new Japanese role-playing game called Metaphor Refantanzio. Here, Atlas Subgnosis of the game, which is being developed by Studio Zero for PC and Xbox Series X. Write your destiny and rise above fear as you step into the fantasy world unlike anything you've ever seen before. Fraught with unsettling mystery, the kingdom stands on a precipice. Now you must embark on a journey overcoming obstacles and forging bonds with friends. So if they're saying forging bonds with friends, that to me basically says that there may be a co-op element. And for a lot of people out there, what's better than playing a game? It's better to play it with friends. And then we've got Towerborn. People of the world are stocked up on high living in a single belfry, forced to fight monsters to reclaim their village in the co-op fighter Towerborn, coming in 2024. We've got Clockwork Revolution, and the first thing they're describing it as that it's not BioShock. So BioShock, for those of you guys, obviously everybody knows BioShock. It's a legendary fucking game. I played it myself. I love the original BioShock. It's legendary to me. This one here is described as a steampunk game from In Exiles Entertainment set in an authoritarian city where you'll have to change the past in order to control the future. Per the trailer, there are mechs too. Clockwork Revolution doesn't have a release window just yet. I would probably say mid to late 2024 at the earliest, but we'll see. And then, of course, Microsoft announced the new Xbox Series S, which is basically just black, which looks pretty cool, but it costs $50 more because it's just an extra 500 gigs of space. In my opinion, it's kind of a waste because, well, if you just spend a $50 extra after that to $400, you could basically buy a much more powerful console in the PS5. You know, the digital version of the PS4 console is worth that much, so I think you're better off buying that, in my opinion. The only thing that the Series S would have is that it's got Game Pass, but again, PlayStation kind of has their own version of Game Pass, even though it's not as good. It's still something to consider. So, especially since you're getting a lot more firepower. I mean, the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5 digital and non-digital versions are the same in terms of capability, except the fact that the non-digital version has an optical drive, right? So, or in a Blu-ray drive. So that's the only difference. Other than that, it's the same all be all. So, might as well spend the $50 and get a PS5. That's what I would do if I was the consumer looking for something. But yeah, that pretty much covers the Xbox showcase portion of this topic. And again, the biggest thing for me that was a letdown was the fact that Killer Instinct was not at show, and it just goes to show that there's probably nothing in development for it, or at least anytime soon, which is a heartbreaker because it's the best fighting game of the last decade, guys. I mean, and it was so good. And the thing is, nothing but passion got this game to be together in the first place, and Microsoft picked it up. It's like, why can't you do that again? It only made you money. It's not, you know, it may not be one of your biggest hitters. I mean, I don't know specifics on that, but I mean, there's a community behind it. They love it, and it can only grow. And it was a gem, and it got 4 years of support from 2013 to 2017. So, but yeah, guys, that ends that part. Now, before we get on to the fourth main topic, I want to know down in the comment section what you guys think and what was your highlight of the Xbox game showcase. What game are you looking forward to? What were you disappointed about? Was it as good as you expected? Was it better? Was it worse? Is the hype real for you? Let me know down in the comment section. Now, let's get into topic number 4. But before we do, I'm going to take a swig of water because I can feel my throat getting dry and it's irritating me. And I haven't drank any water at all since starting this nonstop commentary. So cheers to your health. Much better. Okay, so the main event of today's discussion, ladies and gentlemen, Starfield. Starfield Direct lasted a solid 45 minutes. And when I say a solid 45 minutes, I mean a solid 45 minutes. It was not enough time for them to tell us everything, but at the same time, they told us everything that we needed to know. And long story short, in terms of, well, the beginning part of this discussion at least, is that yes, this game is absolutely 100% ambitious. It's going to be one of the biggest games that was ever made. It's going to be one of the most ambitious games that's ever been made. And if it works, if it's functional as well as it could be at launch, it's going to be one of the greatest gaming accomplishments in gaming history. Period. In terms of what Bethesda is going for with this game, in terms of what you can do, where you can go, the relationships you can build, the things you can build within the world, like for instance, let's put it this way. If you want to build your base on the moon or on a specific planet that you visit, that's what's in the world, in the multiple worlds, and you want to build your base a very specific way, you can do that. And you can do things in this game that will allow you to do that and get those resources. If you want to spend hours, if you're one of the people that spends hours like developing your character in terms of how they look, as well as their traits and stuff like that, you name it, right? You can do that. And when the developers themselves are saying that it's going to be like on a whole other level compared to Fallout, that says a lot. Now, we're going to talk more about this, but one of the biggest elephants in the room is obviously that the game on the Series X is going to be capped at 30. Okay, but like I mentioned before in my previous commentary, the one thing that is going to be the redeemable factor for this game running at 30 on console is the gameplay and everything that you can do in it. And if they get even 70 to 80% of this functional and able like it is, and as bug free as possible, which is another concern, then people are going to be praising it. There are going to be a lot of players and a lot of content creators and new streamers that are going to be coming out of the woodworks because of this game. This is one of those games where you're going to spend hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, attempting to do everything in it. And even if you don't want to attempt to do everything in it, you're going to repeatedly do what you want to do, but in different ways. Like, no matter what it is. And these developers are literally giving you the option to doing just that. Like, from a gameplay perspective, if you want to run around and run and gun, you could do that. If you want to go stealth, you can do that. If you don't want to use your weapon at all, you can do that. You can switch on the fly from first person to third person. So let's say, for instance, you're a player that likes the shooting combat in first person. You can do that. And then whenever you explore, you can be in third person, right? So this is a Bethesda RPG through and through. They've already made themselves very clear on that. So if you are a fan of Fallout, right, and those types of games, chances are, ever since this Starfield Direct, chances are you are very much still erect from this event. I am not even kidding. I'm not even being humorous when I'm saying that. I'm being realistic, because in terms of what they showed and everything that you can do and the level of depth of all those things, like one of my favorite content creators out there is Gerard, the completionist, right? I don't even know if he can make a completionist episode on this game, because if he were to attempt to complete it literally, which means doing everything that there is to do in the game, including achievements and trophies and stuff like that as well, right? It's going to take a ridiculously long ass time. Okay? A ridiculously long ass time. It's almost like these developers don't want players to play anything else. Now, obviously, they will play other games. You know, that's something that doesn't really stop anybody from doing that. But you guys get the point. Like, this game is going to be a lot of players' main game. And I think it's going to have a lot of elements in it that's going to make it addictive or whatnot. Like back in the day, people were talking about World of Warcraft ruining relationships. And at the same time, it was also not just ruining relationships, but it was also forging relationships and forming them. So, you know, because I'm sure at some point people were saying, you know, it's like, oh, my boyfriend spends too much time playing, or I'm sorry, you know, my friend spends all day playing WoW or whatnot. And some people actually met through WoW and all that kind of stuff. Pretty insane, right? Just to name one example. And then obviously Halo 2 did what it did later on when Xbox Live came out and how people were immersed in that. But I think in terms of this generation, Starfield may be that next iteration of that, like that next game that is going to consume so much time from a lot of players, especially players that love that sort of thing, that like it's going to be talked about for a while, especially if the developers succeed. Now, obviously, and rightfully so, a lot of people are jaded in terms of, you know, they're everybody's hyped. I mean, every single comment I've seen, every single video I've seen, everybody's praising it, and rightfully so, especially when you consider the development standpoint. But we can't forget about what happened with Fallout 77, or, you know, the previous Fallout game, you know. It's something we can't forget. So, I mean, granted, it's better now, but you guys get the point. Timing is everything when it comes to games. And the fact that this game is coming out in like, what, 3 months? And with all its ambition and with everything that they've implemented in the game and just how deep it is and stuff like that, as hyped as we are, I mean, we also have a right to be concerned, because it's like, this game is going to be nuts when it launches. And players that actually buy the game will have 5 days early access to it. And I do know that a lot of players are going to buy it, especially if those players are content creators. And then obviously, after those 5 days are up and the game's officially released on Game Pass and all that kind of stuff, people are going to be all over it. And I think there's going to be a lot of content and streams and all that other shit to be made. And it's going to be very interesting, because everybody's story with this game is going to be unique in and of itself. And people are going to be posting videos like, oh my gosh, look what I found, or oh my gosh, look what I did, look what I've discovered. Because they also literally have 1,000 planets, if not more, in this game. So the question is, how in the world do you keep this from becoming repetitive or boring? That's a developer question. I don't know the answer, but all I know is that their answer seems to be like, we're going to give the player to approach however the hell they want, in whichever way they want. So this game is basically, it's all about options, right? Which is great. I think it's going to be the main ingredient that allows the game to become successful, right? With the amount of options and accessibility and capabilities that the player is going to have, it's like, it's going to take them away from other games. And it's like, you know, I mean, especially if it works, it's like, well, this game's giving me all the options and all the opportunities. Why would I want to play something else? You guys get the point. I mean, granted, this is their vision. It's been their vision for years. And now that they have the technology to make it, it's pretty insane. And when you're talking about forging relationships, building your ships in any way you want, and going on missions, side missions, boss fights, gun battles, um, creating your base, going to like wherever you see on your screen, it's insane. And here's another question I have: how much space is this game gonna have? Let me say that again. How much space is this game going to have? I'm sorry. How much space is it going to require? Like, how many gigs of space are we going to need in our PCs or Xboxes in order to play the game? Because this game seems to be freaking huge, man. So now with one of the Final Fantasy games, people are saying, "Oh, this game's got 2 discs, and that's huge." And but we don't know yet. We don't know how many discs Starfield's going to have, or whatever the deal is going to be. So if you have not seen the 45-minute presentation of the Starfield showcase, or the Starfield Direct, or whatever the hell it's called, highly recommend you do so, and you will see exactly what everybody's been talking about. I mean, there's 4 different ranks for all your perks and traits, and you can switch them in certain cases, and you can have occupations, and there's just like, the replayability of this game is gonna be nuts. Even if the game itself is like 30 to 40 hours in terms of the main story, but then you got your side quests and all that kind of stuff. But then at the same time, you got many different ways to play the game. Like, do you want to be a criminal? Do you want to be an explorer? Do you want to be I mean, there's different traits and shit and perks within them, and 4 levels to unlock those perks. I mean, do you want to be a thief? Do you want to be, I mean, seriously. So it's like, the replayability of the game is going to be through the freaking roof, man. So, I mean, just imagine playing the game in every single way possible. Again, this is why I think Gerard, the completionist, this might not be possible for him. I mean, the man's got to keep making content. He's probably going to have to stop like his content for months if he wants to complete Starfield. And that's just not reasonable. But you guys get the point. A lot of players are going to be sinking in some ridiculous hours into this game. And it's going to be very interesting in terms of what those players find and how they decide to go about it. And when it comes to content creation, I think we're going to see a very interesting group of content creators that are going to be covering Starfield in terms of their adventures and all that kind of stuff, right? So that in of itself is exciting. Whether you're into those kind of games or not, you can't help but appreciate what Bethesda is offering to their fan base with a game like this, and that's this in depth. Holy shit, dude. I mean, you get to explore, space and try to answer the question of what's out there. You get to discover aliens and creatures. You get to discover, like, have side quests with different NPCs. And I guarantee you, they probably haven't even showed half of what you can do, if that. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I'm hoping that the gameplay's fun, but other than that, Starfield's going to be one of the greatest accomplishments ever if the game ends up functioning the way it should at launch, and with as many as the littlest amount of bugs as possible, because this game is so full of content that it's like they're definitely going to miss a few things. But a lot of players that are familiar with that sort of thing are going to be willing to forgive it, because the game is just so ambitious. It's giving the players like so many choices, and literally letting them do whatever they want when they want within the world of the game. And at the end of the day, the developers are going to be praised for it, especially if it's done right, and not just if it's done right, but also if it's functioning properly, which is one of my biggest areas of concern at this point. But I'm willing to give the developers the benefit of the doubt. I have faith in them. I admire their creativity, and I admire them literally shooting for the stars in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. But with that being said, it's going to be very interesting in September when this game releases. And everybody's going to be talking about it, especially if it succeeds. And if it doesn't succeed, the last thing Microsoft as well as Bethesda need is negative publicity again. We don't need another, Fallout 76 or whatever it was, or Fallout 77 of what happened. So, and this game is going to be the killer app for Xbox if they succeed the way they think they will. So, with that being said, that concludes the fourth main topic that I wanted to add today. So, at the end of the day, I want to know what are your thoughts on Starfield? What are you hoping for the most? What are you going to do when you play that game? Are you going to be an explorer? Are you going to be a thief? Are you going to be a bounty hunter? I mean, what are you going to do? What kind of relationships are you going to forge? Where in the universe are you going to build your base? How is your ship going to look like? Things like that. Or are you a person that's going to try to find every single side quest and try to complete it in that aspect? I legitimately want to know. So, with that being said, this concludes our long discussion on these four topics. And I would like to know down in the comment section what you guys think overall. I like to thank everybody for listening and or watching. I am going to rest my voice now, and I will catch you guys on the next stream and or in the next videos. Take care. Have a wonderful night and or morning wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch you later.